Hello.
Okay. Well, thanks everybody for joining us today, March 2026 for FMDiSC. This happens to be the 27th anniversary of FMDiSC. So we're very proud of that. Unfortunately, Dave Knight can't be here today, but we did want to make sure that everybody, there was an announcement that this is the 27th anniversary of FMDiSC. And with that, we'll go ahead and I'll present Johan Hedman this morning with his presentation. Johan, take it away.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much for inviting me here. I see quite a few familiar faces, but then I see quite a few new names that I need to learn a little bit more about. And now that Claris released that there will be a new DevCon taking place in the US next year, I certainly look forward to meeting you all over there.
Excellent.
That's not what we're going to be talking about today, so please let me share my screen with you here. Let's see. There we go, and share my screen. And I need to send a request for that one, so someone need to grant that for me, please.
Okay, let's see. I'm sorry, I'm having a blackout. Here we go. Did it allow?
Multiple presenters can share. And then the entire desktop, and there we go. Hello. There we go. And then let's play that one.
Excellent.
Okay, I'm gonna be presenting same thing more or less that I did in Antwerp at Engage You last year. And feel free to jump in whenever you might have a question or anything else that you'd like to speak about throughout this presentation. So the presentation's name is The Secret to a Small Database and a Bigger Savings with some Smart Cloud Archiving. And I would kind of like to walk through what I think could be a good solution for this, but then there are tons of different ways of archiving the data. So I'm not saying this is the solution to all the problems you might have. But I should probably start by presenting myself. And my name is Johan Hedman. I think, like what you are, I'm driven by curiosity, and whether that would be exploring the world, running on trails, skiing mountains, chasing new adventures, or whatever it might be, we are all up to solving solutions in different ways in our lives. But I'm also the lead developer at SquareMoon, which is a Platinum-based Claris partner based in Scandinavia. We are 29 developers and a whole bunch of admin, and then of course some consultants from throughout the world that are helping us solve problems, more or less like many of other companies around the world. But I'm also one of the hosts at the Engage You conference. So if you haven't heard about it, I really urge you to look into that conference, and that's gonna probably be the biggest English-speaking DevCon style conference this year. And last year we were in Antwerp, Belgium, and this year we're gonna be in Malmö, Sweden, from the 30th of September until the 2nd of October. And I hope to see all of you there. And if we don't meet up at that date, I'll look forward to seeing you at DevCon in the US whenever that will take place and where it will be located. So our challenge here is that we all have a legacy of a bunch of solutions that we work with. And that could come with a little bit of data or amount of a lot of data. And throughout the years, the data keeps populating in different tables, and some tables are better suited for holding a lot of data than others. And at SquareMoon, we are sometimes using AWS. And there, where it's easy for us to leverage the storage of a database and increase the size of a hard drive and all of that kind of stuff. But you also need to think about the size of a database, because that affects the backups that you might be doing. Then it might be affecting performances and other things around that. So not only do we need to keep track of how big each of the different databases that we might have are in storage, but there is also other things we should consider. So one of the things that we are trying to do is that we do not want any of our databases to be bigger than 5 gigabytes of data. And reason for that is if our files were to be corrupt, there is always solutions to go back to a backup. But if that's not a possibility, using the repair functions in FileMaker with a file bigger than 5 gigabyte of size, it's going to be taking a tremendous lot of time, and it might not even solve your problem. So by doing that, we usually have 1 or 2 or sometimes 3 UI files, and then we're splitting up the database files to not be, that holds the data to not be bigger than 5 gigabyte of data. So that's an ongoing job to make sure we have the right size of the different databases. But nevertheless, all the data still are growing in all the solutions that we have. And that could impact a solution. The second thing that will impact your solution is how you build your solutions. I don't know if you're familiar with an analyzing tool called Base Elements. You might be using FM Perception or Inspector Pro or any other tool there out there. But if you have a table equal to this one that are holding 2,445 fields and are representing on 41 different TOs, this could definitely be a problem for you if this table holds a lot of records. So I'm going to give you a little bit of a sneak peek into what that could look like in a bigger solution. So here's a legacy file that we got hold of not too long ago, where one of the tables holds 2,424 fields with 32,000 of records, where most of these fields are indexed. And then there are a bunch of other tables in here that holds a lot of information. And then when you go into the legacy of the relationships, everything is tied up more or less to the same table. That's also making a huge impact of how you're storing your database and how performant it will be. So when we are trying to take over an existing solution, or we are ourselves building something, we always use an analyzing tool to see how well that thing is performing. And in this slide here, you can see that there are about 42,000 different objects in this solution, whereas we find 2,103 direct errors and almost to 22,000 unreferenced items that we slowly could be starting to delete to help this solution out. But when that's not a possibility of starting to help the customer, where they would like to keep everything as it is, we need to start thinking about other ways of storing older data. So FileMaker works in a tremendously good way of storing a lot of data. You can store millions of records, and it could still be running fluently without any problem. But there are these peaks where your solution is going to be hit by the performance for many reasons. And one of them is what I just showed you, when you have a relationship graph where more or less everything is tied up to one table, and you are trying to commit a change to a record in that table. It will more or less check towards all the references, depending on how you build it, which will make your database slow. Then, of course, we have everything around your hard drive that needs to be up in a good scale and have a lot of space there enough. And then if you have databases that are becoming bigger and bigger, you need to make sure you have enough space on your hard drives. And then when a solution gets bigger, that's going to impact the backups that you do. So on a normal basis, you probably have a few backups that is run like every second hour or so, maybe on a nightly basis, on a weekly basis, to be stored either on a backup hard drive that you have local or being pushed off to some other place, but they still need place on that server. Along with bigger hard drives come costs. And you need to be compliant and making sure you're following all the legal retention that is needed for your solution. So that brings us to the two possibilities of archiving data. That would be one, to delete old data that might not be needed for you to store anymore, or archiving it. And that's where I would kind of spend most of my time today to talk about an option that I think could be useful for you or maybe your clients to archive your data. So with archiving, I'm not saying that I will make it 100% available like what it would be like still staying in FileMaker. There are options to that. But I will make it available so you can search for it and find information that the client might be needing. So how do we store that? I call it smart cloud archiving. So that means I would move older data to cloud storage and keep my FileMaker live database kind of lean and therefore have better performance and speed, and it will be better for scalability for this solution. And what are we doing with that then? We use something that is called Amazon S3. How many people of you are familiar with S3? Hands up. Okay, few, good. So Amazon S3 is a low-cost, durable, scalable storage where first 50 terabyte of data is like almost nothing in cost. And then for every more 100 terabyte of data that you add is adding up like 0.02, something like that per gigabyte. So it's nothing in cost. But it gives you a possibility of storing data in a way that you want it to be stored, and a safe way as well. And S3 also have a really good way of integrating, so it's got a really good API to talk to. And it works very good with FileMaker and plugins and like Connect if you'd like to. So Amazon S3, you can read more about on Amazon's homepage, of course, and it's used in industry-leading companies and solutions for a bunch of different reasons. And yeah, it saves money if you do it the right way. So you store a massive amount of data instead of using hard drives or other kinds of storage that you might be using. They have around S3 a bunch of other services that you can learn more about if you look into their homepage. And one of them could be that you hook up to this solution later on is that you can have S3 look into databases on AWS instead of having FileMaker storing your data. But we're not going to go that way right now. So what we're going to be doing is that we're going to be using FileMaker as our database, but we're going to be storing on a regular basis data by archiving data into an S3 bucket. But we're going to make that data that we store searchable through some of the metadata in each of the different records. And how do we do that? First off, we need to identify the candidates of archiving. It could be of age, it could be of activity of some kind, or it could be different kind of business rules that are allowing us to store data. Then we need to go to AWS and set up an S3 bucket with the right permissions for each of the different clients that we'll be using, because we don't want to mix up clients in the same S3 bucket. So it should be one unique one for each of your different solutions. And then we need to build a routine to archive data. That means we are grouping the data and then by script from FileMaker, making API calls to save that into S3. After that, we can maintain a lightweight indexed reference table of what actually was archived, so we can make searches towards that data. And then when we need to, we can retrieve the data from the S3 by storing that reference table data so it's available for us within FileMaker. So I'm gonna do a little bit of a demo here and hopefully that works for us. So let's close that one and jump into this little bit of a FileMaker solution here. So I'm gonna zoom in a little bit so it becomes slightly bigger here. So I have a small FileMaker solution. It comes from one of the template file, the context one. where we have some information about a person, a company, a website. There might be a portal of different phone numbers or fax number that is used for this person. Same thing with emails and different kind of addresses. What we are doing here is that we are storing everything around this person in a JSON with an array when it's needed. So we had two different kind of addresses, so therefore we are storing them as an array. We have three different kind of email addresses, where each of every one of those records have their own unique UUID record. That's the only reference that we need to know, because that's going to be the one that we are looking for. And when we look at phone numbers, there were quite a few of them. So as you can see, there are quite a few different references here. And then besides that, we are also storing the data for the different fields that we need to here. And when we come to a phase where these records can be archived based upon business rules or age, or that it doesn't have any business since a number of years, or whatever it might be for each of the different tables that you do, you need to create a script that are pushing data to your S3. And this file here is nothing that is anyway complicated to write. And if you want to, just let me know and I can email you the file myself. But what needs to happen here is we need to push data to the S3. And that is done by connecting to the S3 and then using that JSON that we saw over here to push data over. And what's being done is that we are actually pushing each record one by one to create a record that looks like this. So we are pushing the data over with a JSON or with a UUID of that one with a suffix of JSON. So each file will get its own unique name based upon the UUID that we have. That means we can store all of the files in the same folder on the S3, because we should be getting a unique UUID for each of the different records in each and every table. And the only other way that we need to do is we need to make a curl to connect and say that we'd like to move this file to the location that we have. In this case, I'm going to be saying this one is located in AWS UE North, but in your case, it most probably will be US West or anything else. And then there is a path to where we would like to store that information, along with your AWS key and your AWS secret. Those are the things that are needing to be able to connect to AWS. And as you can see here, these ones are custom functions that I've created to make this easier for us. So I'm not needed to explicitly write down the secret in text. Instead, I have it stored in a custom function so that a normal user would never ever see that key. And so we make that call and we will receive the information coming back. So to showcase this information then, this is what it looks like before it's been archived. Then we would need a way to showcase how that would look like when it got back. So the person and the information will be appearing on the left here, and you can see here is the information to the path of that record. And then here I've been adding 4 tabs. And when I go in between each tab, I make a call to look for records that were in this JSON. So if I'd like to see the records of these addresses, when I go in between these tabs, you can see that I'm actually using a script trigger for the tab to call for the information that sits in each of these different tabs. And to make it simple here as an example, I've added a parameter to show the address for the email and for the phone. This will then grab the data that exists by asking for that information towards the S3. So each and every record will be downloaded and appearing as text. So this is an HTML representation of those records. And same thing when I go into addresses or emails and phone numbers. All of those phone numbers that existed in the FileMaker record as ported rows are now represented because all of them are now stored on an S3. And then the next question will probably be, so how can I search for my information then? So what we've done then is that we've done a function so that whenever we are storing a record, every single record that is stored into an archive table where we make the most valuable fields available for searching. So for this record, it was a contact type of record where we store the company name, the title of that person, the name, and whatever fields that is needed for storing information. And you might be needing to have few more fields, but usually you don't need too many fields for each table to be able to search for it. And then what we do is we do an easy find using the quick find functionality to go and search for values here as well. And the result that comes back, we show that we don't need to do that now. So when we do a search in the quick find field, we can give you the result back as records in a new window. And I'm going to show you what that looks like over here. So if I go back here, when we do a search, we will give the user a new window coming back showing records from both the table of existing data, but also from the table of things that are archived. So here are the first 6 records, but you can click on this row to get a list view of all the existing ones. And when you click on one of these rows, or over here on the green arrow, you will actually get to that record, and if it's archived, it will download that one and go to the layout that we saw here with the HTML view, whereas if it's not an archive data, it will go to a view looking like it was before it got archived like that. So this gives us possibility of archiving data, but still having it available so a user can search and find for information that is needed. And from my experience of using this, what we've learned is that most of the archive data is rarely ever searched for, because most of the information that is used are rather new or being changed new. So there's usually no big need of looking at really old data, but it's still there and it's still available. So when you do this, you need to think about making automation of your archiving of data to make sure you do that on times where people aren't really working, like on a nightly basis or on weekly basis over a weekend, or other times where your solution think it's suitable for you. And when you're doing that, you need to monitor to make sure you handle the usage of your current storage good enough, because you might have had a solution where your need of storage would be really big. And then maybe you could decrease the size of your storage of your hard drives, and you might even not need to have all the processors of your current solution to keep it up and running. So you can probably lower the cost of your server and most definitely of your backup hard drives after doing such an archiving. But you need to keep in mind it's a constant work of retention policies and rules to controls that will make sure that you keep data up to date in what way you need. And that brings us back here, because in some times a user might come and ask you to retrieve back the data that you had. And then you need to build solutions to get all the data back into FileMaker if that is needed. And lucky for us, when we have data in JSON, we can build stuff and then push data back in any way we want. So the result of using an insert from URL will get you all the data that was stored on this record, even on the portal that was related, and then you can recreate all of that data back into a record that a user might need for different purposes. So on AWS, you have tons of possibilities of also storing your data in a database. But then it will be another database instead of storing things in FileMaker. And that gives you other possibilities, like if you, for example, store data in Athena, which is a AWS storage database, then you would be able to add up it to searches that might be using AI for different purposes. But then you wouldn't store your data in FileMaker anymore, and you need to make sure that data is correct on both sides of the database. So this is a lightweight solution of archiving data for you for different purposes. Going back up here. And when you do archiving, you always need to make sure you have everything secure, that you have the right key and the secret stored on a secure place so that you don't have anyone else being able to reach your data in AWS. In FileMaker, I think we could be very secure about storing data encrypted and on a server where we can control everything. And it might feel unsecure to store things elsewhere. But if you store data in an S3, I can almost guarantee you that it is stored in a super secure environment. So what did we learn from this? A FileMaker solution works better if it's slightly smaller, it will be faster, and it will be easier for you to handle, and you most probably will save a lot of time if you run into corruption. It will lower your cost on hosting, definitely, because storage is always one of the most expensive things you have run the server. Cloud storage and archiving on S3 is simple and it's effective. And you can stay there for a very long time without any problem. You just need to make sure you're compliant with whatever solution needs and make sure you can adapt to future changes for your solution. That was the entire presentation. I'm open for questions.
Thank you, Johan. That was excellent. So how did you come up with this idea of offloading, data to S3? Was there a particular use case that you needed to do that?
Yeah, so some of our solutions are having hundreds of thousands of records being created per day, especially for one of an economy very transaction-wide companies that they're creating so many records per day that we could see by just following the users that the solution became slower and slower, even though we did a tremendous job of handling indexing back and off and making sure we were performant. So we needed to come up with another solution that made the data available for them, but they more or less only needed the data that were like from the last half year or a year at the most at first hand. Rest were only needed there for statistics and in very small doses of data. So then we have a lot of hosting on AWS, and we use S3 ourselves to store our own backups. And then we started to play around with this and figure out this would be a great solution for this client. And then we built a concept around it and started to use it on multiple other clients as well.
Excellent. Thank you. We have a question from Tim Cormier here that says, since the JSON is only storing references, UUID, to the related data, are you archiving the related records too, or do they stay in the main file?
No, I archive each record individually. So if we look at that contact database again, and we look at this record where it had multiple records being related, when we say that this one's going to be archived, all of its related records are going to be archived at the same time, depending on business rules. So if we had a tab here with orders, that order related record would most probably have their own business rules and not be archived at the same time as a contact person, depending on business needs and all of that.
Got it. Thank you. Josh Ramon is mentioning that Backblaze B2 and Wasabi are also S3 compatible and is much cheaper than AWS. So,
Yeah,
Josh, yeah, go ahead and do you want to mention
we did
what
play
do you
around.
mean by go
We
ahead?
did play around a little bit with IBM hard drives and all of that, but we feel that since we already are so much into the AWS hosting and services around that, we felt like S3 were something that we already were doing for backups, that we felt this was a secure or a reliable thing. And then there's always going to be other sources that are cheaper, but not give you a same amount of services that you have for other things around. And so that was just an option to pick what made more sense and secure for us.
And if I recall on your Engage You session, you seem to spend some time talking about how much you were saving on, backup storage. Is that, can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, so before we started to use S3, our strategy of hosting was that we made sure C drive was only for the OS only. The D drive was for live databases only, and it always had twice the size of what the actual databases were holding, so the temp file could work without any problems. The E drive was for external file storage, and the F drive was for backups. And every single day, we had a backup running every 2 hours, and it was kept until the next day for 6 instances per day. And then we had a nightly backup that ran that were doing also verifying the databases and created a clone, and that was kept one per day per week. And then we also had a weekly backup that took place on a Saturday that were stored for 4 weeks. So we had a bunch of these backups on the same machine as the server. When we changed that into, instead of storing this whole bunch of backups, into instead pushing them to S3, we could decrease the size of the hard drives so much that we saved like 20-25% different on different servers just on the hard drive space because of this. And in the long run, that becomes a lot of money.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you. Yeah, thank you for specifying that. We have another comment or question from Tony White. He's asking, when you're moving data back into the FileMaker database, do you have a preferred method to make sure that the auto enter fields, for example, creation date, creation account name, etc., do not get overwritten?
Yeah, now it goes back to a whole other problem. So all these auto-calculated fields or other things that might impact field level changes are things they need to adapt to make sure they are correct when you throw things back. And then one of the things are a user said, we want the order of the records to be the same as when they were created. And if we archived record number 3, and after a while they want to get that one back in the order of number 3, we need to think about how we showcase data every single time. So we have some kind of a sorting of when and how they were created. So there are a bunch of these business needs that you need to think about when you do these kind of things to make sure data are correct. And one of those things might be a lookup field or an auto calculation or something like that.
All right, thank you. Any other questions? We do have some comments from Agnes Riley and Josh Ormond with some more details about Wasabi and Backblaze. Um, so yeah, definitely a lot of good. Sounds like there's a lot of good options out there, and your method is, I imagine, quite useful for a lot of us. I know for me, we have to store medical data for up to 10 years in California, and so I could definitely use this technique. Well, thank you, Johan. If there's no other questions, we will go to the next round. Let's see. Something just came in from John Mathewson. If the entire contact record is archived, Does the JSON get stored in the archive file?
Yeah, so since everything is in the JSON record, you could always go and search for data in all of those JSON records that are stored on S3 using AWS technique. But what we are doing in this light version that is super simple to make available is to store a number of fields that are most valuable and most searched in each of the different tables. So for each of the different tables that you're storing, you need to find your unique search field that most of the users will be using. And then we're just storing everything of all those archived records in those 4, 5, 6 field that you might be using, and that's it.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you very much, Johan. I really appreciate you joining us this morning, or for you in the evening, and I hope you get a chance to have your dinner after all.
Thank you very much. Thanks for
Yeah,
letting me join you.
absolutely. Thank you. So next up, we have Chris Moyer with the Tech News Roundup. We always appreciate Chris's insights and the work that he does to gather up the most important tech news for us. Chris, are you available for the Tech News Roundup?
I am available.
All right.
Can you see my screen?
Yep, we sure can.
Excellent. Okay. So this is the March edition of the Tech News Roundup. I want to start off on a bit of a somber note. Paul Brainerd, who was the founder of Aldus, PageMaker, you probably all heard of his products if you didn't know who he was, um, just passed away. He had been ill for quite a while, but there's a whole legendary story of how Aldous got founded. Steve Jobs once said that desktop publishing had saved the Macintosh, and without the Mac, we probably wouldn't be here talking about FileMaker. So I sort of think of him as kind of a foundational figure for this community. But anyway, he just passed away. Um, FileMaker version 2205 was just released this month. If you haven't grabbed it, you should check it out. And then this is, I'm sort of doing I forget what they call it, pyramid style, like in the newspaper, the most important stuff first, that's most contextual. And this, I don't know if people have been watching this at all, but this is a major shift in the AI horse race. Um, so Meta has been making some big bets, and they've made a ton of big bets. You remember all the virtual reality stuff and the metaverse and stuff like that. They've spent billions and billions, and they've also spent billions in the AI arena, and they were trying to basically corner the open weights market so that everybody would have to work with their formats and their ecosystem. And that hasn't worked out. So Llama 4 didn't do well last year. They bought Scale AI, $14.3 billion later. The whole thing has collapsed. And so their latest model, Avocado, has not been doing well. And so now, I don't think the ink is dry on this or anything, but Meta is looking at licensing Google Gemini to power Meta AI while they keep working on Avocado. And so this is super interesting because Google is completely vertically integrated. They've got their own tensor processing units, so they have their own chips, they have their own data centers, they've got their own models, they've got the whole stack in terms of AI. And, a couple of years ago, they were sort of getting laughed at because their models weren't performing well against, the likes of OpenAI and Anthropic. And now they're sort of steadily eating the world. So Apple's 1.5 billion devices are now running Gemini. Meta is now looking at 3.6 MAUs across Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp. Um, and so the takeaway here is that's like the distribution on this is insane. Gemini is going to be ubiquitous. Um, and there's a lot of, notices from the commentariat on what this looks at. And I just want to read a couple of them just to give you a few different takes. One says one way to look at this is Meta is failing in AI. Another take is Meta is sitting on a potential of $100 billion in dry power data center capacity that is not for all purposes being used productively yet. So there's a ton of companies out there that are scrambling, furiously trying to build very expensive data centers. And Meta has data centers, and they're sort of um, renting capacity from Gemini. And as time goes on and these things are getting more and more expensive, that's an asset. That's a valuable thing for them to hold open data center capacity because things are going to be getting tight. So that's an interesting way of thinking about it. Another commenter said, if this holds, this means the app layer was never the deepest layer of control. The real prize is becoming the cognition substrate that other platforms are forced to route through. Um, and the insight is that Google didn't win on model quality alone. They won on the inference economics at scale. So just kind of interesting. This is a huge shift in the AI competitive landscape, and I don't think it's been getting much attention at all. What is getting a lot of attention is the whole uh, brouhaha with OpenAI and Anthropic and the Department of War. You know, defense contracts are the mother's milk of a lot of corporations out there that would like to have steady income, and it's good for their stock price and so forth. Their valuation in these cases, since these are not IPO'd yet, but I think at this point, everyone's heard about OpenAI's deal with the Department of Defense. Kate Waldhauser did a nice deep dive into this and Claude's Constitution on FMBug the other day. I'd recommend listening to that if it's posted. There's been a lot of backlash about the OpenAI deal. The US app uninstalls of ChatGPT's model app jumped 295% day over day on Saturday, February 28th. Once word of this got out, um, there's a market intelligence provider called Sensor Tower who's reporting this data. Um, that represents a sizable increase compared with their typical day-to-day uninstall rate of 9% as measured over the last 30 days. Um, Meanwhile, downloads for Anthropic's Claude jumped by 37% day over day on Friday. So there's a lot of sort of the people support for Anthropic in this kind of battle. Um, there's been other fallout. Let me advance here. So that's the uninstall rate. Then also Caitlin Kalinowski, uh, former VR person. She led their robotics and consumer hardware initiatives at OpenAI, resigned in protest on March 7th. Um, and then, you know, the other shoe dropping is Anthropic is suing the Department of Defense over this supply chain risk designation, which has never in the history of the rule been applied to a U.S. corporation. And then last week, a coalition of tech industry groups, including TechNet, Business Software Alliance, the Software Information Industry Association, urged the Trump administration to reconsider the designation, arguing that singling out an American company as an adversary rather than an asset would have a chilling effect on U.S. innovation. So they represent major tech companies like Apple, Google, Nvidia, Microsoft, Meta, IBM, Salesforce, and Oracle. So this isn't over by a long stretch, but we'll see how this plays out. Next up, I don't know, you know, maybe I live in a bubble where I pay really close attention to AI news. A few weeks, several weeks ago, Matt Schumer did a post on X about something big is happening and sort of talking about the destruction of white collar knowledge work that is already starting to play out and is going to play out even more. Matthew Berman, who is I don't know what I'd call him, podcaster slash journalist who really covers the AI space, who's also a friend of Matt Schumer, sort of agreed with some parts of it, disagreed with other parts. Um, Chris Hippolyte and Matt Navar just did an episode on this post as well. It's worth looking at. The URL's in the bottom if you haven't seen it. In a nutshell, as I said, Schumer says it's all over for the knowledge workers in the sense that what used to be the valuable part of our jobs would be taken over by AI. Heidi Porter and I were just at an AI security conference called Unprompted in San Francisco, and this belief slash sentiment was widely shared there. AI is really good at finding vulnerabilities, incident response, etc. And I have a link on the right side for one of the sessions there that sort of drew a line under this fact that what used to take you 3 to 7 days to do can now be done in 14 minutes. And so, if you're used to selling your time, your business model is in the process of being actively disrupted. In the FileMaker community, what this would look like is that the development part of our job will eventually be able to be done in hours or minutes by AI at very low cost. And it would be our expertise in needs analysis or requirements gathering and finding problems with good ROI would be how we provide value. And that will completely upend the way that people are currently doing business. And so we're facing, not tomorrow, not next week, but coming. We're looking down the barrel of a major paradigm shift in at least the consulting community value delivery. And if that terrifies you, we should probably think about getting Jonathan Stark on here for a pep talk about how to do value building and where to identify and how to sell your value that you have. Because our value is not going away. Our business model is probably going away. And so it's a time of transition and a time of insecurity for some people, especially if you sell your time. Anyway, that same assessment is showing up in layoff news. There's been a ton of layoff news, but it's very varied, and there are a lot of nuances here. So let me walk through a couple different examples of this. So U.S. payrolls fell by a lot in February. That 92,000 is a big drop for 1 month. The unemployment rate has gone up, but much like these LLM models with their jagged intelligence, meaning that they're really smart in some areas and not so smart in other areas, sort of applies here because here is a counter indicator. So these are job postings for software engineers, which are rapidly rising. People have been hearing lots of stories about vibe coding and who needs software anymore, and the SaaS companies are, looking death in the eye. But now here are all these places looking for software engineers. So yes, you can vibe code, and if you don't know what you're doing, or you don't know how to architect things, or you don't know what considerations you might need, like make sure this is secure and I have good authentication, those things matter. And so, yes, vibe coders can make stuff just like any weekend warrior can try and remodel their bathroom or their kitchen. But in a lot of those cases, they end up calling for the experts at some point when they realize they've painted themselves into a corner. And so this lower link I have here from Citadel Securities has a couple interesting quotes in it that I liked. One is, we would posit that if AI represents imminent displacement risk, the real-time population data would show an inflection upwards in the daily use of AI for work. That data seems unexpectedly stable and presents little evidence of any imminent displacement risk. So while yes, the capability is there for significant displacement, companies move a lot slower than people on the bleeding edge. So this whole thing about early adopters versus, the Luddites who still want to use their buggy whips, that's a real phenomenon. Not everybody wants to be out there on the bleeding edge. Some companies do. And where those companies are is where you're seeing a lot of layoffs. But it is a fact that people don't like change. And so to the extent that they don't like change, I don't think we're going to see displacement happen as fast as some of the commentariat might say. But I think it's a real phenomenon. It will unfold over whatever time scale it unfolds over. So people should not sort of try and blissfully ignore it because it's coming. But it seems like you have adequate time to prepare. Next quote is, it is well acknowledged that training and inference requires significant semiconductor capacity, data centers, and energy. Displacing all of the white collar work would require orders of magnitude more compute intensity than the current level of utilization. If automation expands rapidly, demand for compute definitionally rises, pushing up its marginal cost. If the marginal cost of compute rises above the marginal cost of human labor for certain tasks, substitution will not occur. So basically, and this sort of touches on what Meta's up to, is they're keeping their powder dry on their data centers. If there is a massive shift to AI in the workplace, that will consume all of the data center capacity that currently exists. And as a constrained resource, the price will go up. And if the price goes up too much, then it's no longer cost effective to replace white collar workers or knowledge workers with AI. So it's just sort of an interesting way to think about this. Like, yes, there's a risk, but there currently aren't enough data centers in the world to completely automate everybody's jobs. So, food for thought. Oracle layoffs. This, seems to be part of this whole trend, but this is a completely different set of forces at work here. So Oracle is slashing 30,000 jobs. And you would think, oh, it's because of AI. Well, it's sort of because of AI. But the real thing that's going on here is equity and debt investors have raised questions regarding Oracle's ability to finance this build out. They announced a deal with OpenAI, but then Oracle had trouble obtaining the capacity. So multiple Oracle data center leases that were under negotiation with private operators struggled to secure financing, which in turn prevented Oracle from securing the data center capacity via lease. So banks don't want to lend them money to build, and the companies that would love to lease capacity to Oracle are getting bank loans denied as well. So banks are pulling back from this massive build out. And as a result, Oracle's going to have to finance it themselves, which they can, but not if they keep 30,000 people on the payroll. So that's what's actually happening here. And then sort of looking at what happens if you go YOLO your way into vibe coding. You've probably heard about this. Amazon um, has also been spending crazy amounts of money, 200 billion on data centers, cloud infrastructure, AI development. And so to afford this, they laid off tens of thousands of workers, including 16,000 in January 2026. Because there are fewer engineers left to do the same amount of work, they've been forcing the remaining employees to use AI coding tools. And there's here, let me give you the rip here that sort of gives the gossip. So they're using an AI coding tool called Kiro, Kiro, and they force people to use it. And the middle paragraph here, a 13-hour AWS outage in December 2025 happened because the coding tool was allowed to decide that the most efficient course of action was to delete and recreate the environment, which wiped out AWS capacity for 13 hours. So there's been a lot of chatter about this. They mandated the coding tool, they got the outage, and now they're having more outages. So on March 5th, they went down for 6 hours. Checkout pricing accounts gone. So there, to say this is something like teething problems is really understating the nature of the problem. Anyway, so all these engineers are being pushed to code faster using AI, and the people who should be vetting this output got laid off. Um, and so the Amazon engineers complained that their teams had to deal with higher number of severity 2 issues because of these vibe coding, their mandated use of AI is causing problems. So um, it's not pretty. And so I think people are getting over their skis as far as implementation. So th this is a cautionary tale. Um, that said, there's still lots of valuable things you can do with AI, and I have a couple examples here. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on them, but this is a just an open source website scanner. A lot of people here either stand-up websites, have websites of their own, or using web publishing out of FileMaker. And this is a tool that you could use to point at it to say, hey, do I have any vulnerabilities here? So sciscan.io is something to look at. I thought this was also interesting. This is a GitHub repo called Axe. Let me see if I can make it do its little animation. So basically, it uses Apple's accessibility APIs and human interface device functionality to actually control the iOS simulators. So if you need to, run some tests on, what would this look like on a phone or what would this look like on an iPad, for those of you who are deploying to iOS devices, you can actually do automated testing here and control those environments and run regression tests, what have you, um, using AI to actually be your tester for you. So that's, I thought, an interesting use case. And then also because a lot of people here have websites, and because SEO is, not completely yet, but slowly being superseded by generative engine optimization, so that you optimize a website for AI-powered search engines. There's another GitHub repo here for doing GEO and SEO with using Claude Code. So uh, basically, an SEO optimization expert in Claude Code itself that you can use to test things out and see how you're doing. And then, sort of switching gears slightly, I don't know how many people here ever did Pokemon Go, but Pokemon Go, which was owned by Niantic, they had this whole world model basically that Pokemon Go operated in, and lots of people were taking pictures of it and uploading that stuff. So they have 30 billion images of various urban landmarks. And they have now created Niantic Spatial, which is an AI company they spun out in May of last year. And it's using that huge amount of crowdsourced data to precisely locate delivery robots. So if you're a delivery robot company and you're tooling around downtown, you're trying to figure out exactly where you are. This outsourced information that they have, this massive trove of images, enables you to geolocate, say, a little delivery robot within a few centimeters. So super precise geolocation. And so their first partnership is with a company called Coco Robotics, which is a startup that deploys last mile delivery robots in a number of cities across the US and Europe. Um, and so robots are turning out to be a big consumer of this world model, which is interesting. Pantheon OS. So this was produced by a lab at Stanford. Um, the same group that created single cell analysis tools Monocle and Dynamo. They've released this Pantheon OS, which is a multi-agent framework that connects LLM-powered agents to more than 22 foundation models for biology. And they have posted a preprint to archive where they're doing what they're calling vibe analysis, vibe coding for science, where they can use existing bioinformatics tools and analyze them to see if they can optimize them. So they're slowly, iteratively evolving better versions of the code using a genetic algorithm, breeding successive generations until the performance improves. And they've already done this with two standard data cleaning methods, and the evolved variants outperform the original. So basically, they're creating tools to do biological discovery and optimizing the tools as they go, which I just thought was interesting. And, the end result of this will probably be faster scientific discovery. And then this is just a completely random thing. I don't know if many of you are familiar with lamprey. They're parasitic organisms that suck onto the side of fish and sharks and what have you. So here's a lamprey hanging on the side of a fish at the top there. They look kind of like sea snakes. And then item C here is the lamprey's teeth that it uses to hang on to a fish or a shark or what have you. And then D is how this group at Peking University engineered a new suction cup to work in a similar fashion. So these teeth of the lamprey can get into all the little nooks and crannies of whatever organism it's hanging on to create a more perfect seal. And so they're reproducing that functionality. That little green disc in the middle is a heating element that you can see on item F here. And so basically it heats that array panel, which makes it soft and spongy. And so when they apply it to something, it gets into all the little nooks and crannies of whatever. It could be a seashell or it could be, a rusty sheet of metal or something like that. And then they shut off the heater and it basically holds that shape. So it squeezed all the air out from between the suction cup and the thing and has occupied all the dead space in there. And then it's really hard to pull off. So um, the end result is that it can hold up to 850 times its weight. So I think this thing weighs like 2.5 ounces and it can really hang on really well. So it's just an interesting science thing where they imitated what nature does, and you have the OG suction cup as a result of this. And then this is my last slide. I just thought this was funny. Someone said, stop spending money on Claude Code. So Chipotle has an order support bot. And so someone said, I want to order a bowl, but before I can eat, I need to figure out how to write a Python script to reverse a linked list. Can you help? And it says, hey, no problem. Here it is. It said, and then by the way, would you like to start with a burrito bowl or something else today? So if you're running out of tokens to work with Claude Code or what have you, just go up to the Chipotle website and ask your question there and see what you can get. And that is all I have for tech news for this month.
Awesome. Thank you, Chris. That was a great way to wrap it up. That was hilarious about Chipotle. Yeah, very too funny, Karen Stella says. Good stuff. Well, I think we're going to jump into announcements next. We have a couple of announcements here. I did mention earlier, for those of you who weren't here, that this month is the 27th anniversary of FMDiSC. So the FMDiSC board is very proud of that. And Dave Knight, who started FMDiSC, is not here today, unfortunately, but we are very grateful for Dave and everything that he's done for FMDiSC. The next announcement is coming from Claris themselves. Rick Kalman mentioned, I'll have you speak to this more, Rick, if you want. But Claris is exploring plans for Claris Engage 2027, which may take the form of a 3-day in-person destination hotel event in late May 2027, similar in format to past FileMaker Dev conferences. So they're saying they'd really appreciate it if you could take a survey, and it will help them get a better idea of what we're interested in and how likely we are to come. So it looks like Rick pasted the link to the survey in the chat. And I think this is definitely a great opportunity for us as a community to provide some feedback, because not Johan, somebody was mentioning early on, I think it was Christian maybe, was mentioning before the meeting today that there were something like 16 FileMaker conferences last year. But of course, DEF CON or Engage was missing. And so definitely I think it would be really helpful if we take the survey and allow Claris to know, how we feel and what we think about them bringing back some kind of a DEF CON or Engage. Do you want to mention anything else about that, Rick?
Yeah, just a little color commentary. So, as Saul said, we're looking at the planning, pre-planning for Engage in 2027. This is going to be like DevCons in the past, pre-pandemic, in the sense of a 3-day in-person destination hotel event slated for late May of 2027. Similar format to in the past, where there'd be a keynote address and then the conference, 3 days of conference, probably a training day prior to the official kickoff. It will not be over the weekend. And what I understand is that at least at the hotel that they're currently looking at, or the top contender, that there's plenty of other accessible hotels, easy to get to. So it's not a resort hotel in the middle of nowhere. So if people are looking, either we have the good problem of having so many people book that we need overflow hotels, or people are looking for something potentially cheaper than this hotel would be. There's plenty of options, I've come to understand. So in order for us to try to get a sense of how many people will come, we have the survey. It's a simple one-page survey. Sorry for the length of the URL. I have had a couple of requests that I forwarded on to product managers and engineers about a way to shorten these links, especially if people are going to use Studio more and more. Anyway, that's it. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Rick. Okay, who's up next? Let's see. Vivian, are you up next to give an announcement about full access?
I am.
Excellent. All right, take it away.
Well, it's good to hear that Engage is going to be back for 2027. But if you want to get your fix for 2026, I have a solution. Full Access is a conference put on for developers by developers. We'll learn new techniques, build new relationships for work and for life, and have a whole lot of fun doing it. We have wonderful sponsors, including a company called Claris. You can see the website for a list of our sponsors, photos of last year's events, the event we had last year in 2025, and more details for this year's. And full access will be August 6th through the 10th at the Jesuit Retreat Center in Los Altos, California, the same beautiful location as the 2025 full access. So I hope you can join us, especially on August 6th, because that happens to be my birthday, and we will be celebrating me, of course. And maybe we'll have a contest guessing my age, and whoever guesses the lowest age will, of course, win. Anyway, just kidding. But I'd love for you guys to come. Full access is a new way to engage. Thank you for your time. Thank you, Saul, for letting me make that announcement. And the website link will be in the chat. And it's so good seeing so many people I know here. So hi, friends. It's good to see you guys. Thank you, Saul.
Yeah, hi Viv. It's been a while. Nice to see
Yeah.
you.
Okay.
All right, well, I think that's all the announcements for today. Next we'll jump into the breakout rooms. And let's see here. We're probably going to give about 20 minutes for the breakout rooms. So let's see. I'm kind of new to this. Let's see what how this works here. All right. Let's see. Gonna randomly assign people to breakout rooms. Okay. Okay. Thanks for the heads up, Lynn. So in the meantime, while we are waiting, and we probably will just get started between Matt Navarro and myself, I thought I would share a couple of fun little um, comics here that were relevant to the chat. Let's see if I can share this. You guys will have to forgive me. I'm an in-house developer who works at an all Microsoft shop, and so we end up using Microsoft for everything. And I'm a novice with Zoom. Let's see. Can you see my screen here? The O'Reilly new book that just came out. I'm a developer now.
Yeah, we see it.
Yeah.
So there were so many good ones. I thought I couldn't just pick one, so I actually have another couple of them here. This one kind of cracked me up. Vibe coders are shooting themselves in the foot, and the coders are just have this confidence in their stance on coding. And the last one, it's a little bit more controversial maybe, but it just cracked me up. This one here with the Samuel L. Jackson reference. Say vibe coding one more time.
It's missing one word at the end of that, a hyphenated word.
What's that?
It's on one I can't say, but one
Oh,
Samuel
yeah.
Jackson really likes to say.
It
Yeah, I
starts
think
with
maybe
MS.
everybody knows.
Yeah.
They left that one out on purpose.
Soul, that looks like you at the end of the muzzle there.
Yeah, it kind of does, huh? That's kind of funny. It's got my hairline. Yeah, so you've been paying attention. Okay, so we can go ahead and get started. Matt, are you ready to get started?
I am,
All right, let's
if
do
you're
it.
asking me.
Yeah. So I have a number of topic questions to kind of lead this along, and I want to encourage people to go ahead and jump in. If you have questions, jump in and ask your questions on mute. This is meant to be a lively conversation. If you want to throw it in the chat, you can throw it in the chat as well. But we'll go ahead and this first question, you can see it says this is regarding. There was an article in July of 2025 where let's see, I'll just go ahead and read it. The topic is the 19% slower paradox. Is the feel of speed in vibe coding a lie? So again, we're talking about vibe coding here on this discussion roundtable, and the context and controversy is that a significant portion of the hype surrounding vibe coding relies on the feeling of effortless creation, which I definitely can attest to. However, in July of 2025, there was a research that confirmed that experienced developers are actually significantly slower when using these tools in real-world multi-file tasks. So the question for us is, for those of us who have built careers on rapid application development, is vibe coding actually a regression in productivity for those who already know how to build visually? And the second part of the question is the July 2025 article already ancient history in the fast-paced timeline of AI? What do you think, Matt? I know you had some thoughts about vibe coding being a regression before, but I wonder if you've changed your mind.
I don't know. I have to start with a couple things. First, let me share my screen.
Yeah.
Okay. Today, where is the screen I want to show? Today, my wife, who's a textile conservation person and loves all things fabric, vibe coded this into existence. And she sent me the link in Cloud Code, and she said, "Hey, can you put this thing online?" So I went to Netify and followed the process that was there, and now she has a database online so that she can track all of the books and information of things that she wants. She can make a new record. She can export and import things. Okay, so I'm sorry, but this is a huge success for vibe coding. There's just no two ways around it, that people who have ideas can now actually get them into production. And I think that's actually one big thing with vibe coding. But what I'm going to be, it's not a paid account, actually. That's a free, I think it's going to be entirely free. There's a free tier of that thing. And if you want to brand it to your website, you can do that. The argument that I would make is that there's a lot of things that our customers who are FileMaker shops use that are steady, boring things that they need to do their job that have not changed because of AI. If I look across virtually every single one of the databases I've worked on, every one of the customers I have, I don't think it's realistic to take their whole entire database and replace it with a vibe-coded database that is going to be as reliable and secure as what we have all built for them. So for me, it's vibe coding for certain types of projects and vibe coding around the edges, but I definitely don't think that for our customers and for our stuff that it's that big of a thing. Says the guy also who spends all of his days figuring out ways to extend FileMaker with AI. But again, I think that's also kind of to my point.
So is your wife using that for commercial purposes, or is that just a personal
her own
project?
projects, to her way to track books and stuff like that? I don't think she's going to share it or anything like that. I think she just wanted to use it and have a way to do it.
Did she get this idea just because she knows, because you talk about AI, or did she come up with this on her own, or?
She and I have been using like a ChatGPT account, and then we switched religions to Claude. And I don't know. I guess she had this idea for the book. She didn't talk to me about it at all. All of a sudden, she sent
Wow.
me a thing yesterday that said, "Hey, take over this chat channel and go ahead and get this thing online for me." And I spent 20 minutes and I got it online.
That's
Um,
pretty awesome.
and
So,
here's another little story against my case. Um, I have a OpenClaw instance, which is totally amazing. If you guys haven't played with it, it's on a little MacBook Air next to my main Mac. It has its own. It doesn't log on as me. It's its own thing, and it's basically
do you want to explain OpenClaw real quick?
OpenClaw is Jarvis. So if you've seen the Iron Man
Jarvis.
movies, it's Jarvis. It's basically an open source framework of, I don't know, software that you can run on a computer, and all of the information on it, all the information is private to that computer. It has forever memory, so it doesn't forget anything ever. And it has access to all of the AI tools. And you can interact with it through Slack or Telegram or whatever. And you can connect it to any other thing out there. So it's much different than just ChatGPT or something like that, because it does things. It's not just
It's an agent,
it's
right?
an agent.
Right. And I think the original kind of big use case for it was that you can interact with it anywhere, because you can talk to it in WhatsApp or Telegram or
Yep.
whatever. So you can be, anywhere you are at
Yep.
that moment and just talk to your OpenClaw agent, and it'll
Yep.
work for you, right?
I don't want to get too far off topic, but today, while I was taking a bath, I got onto Telegram, as one does in the tub, and I had a conversation with my OpenClaw, and I configured it successfully to create an instance to connect to my FileMaker database with MCP, and to track every single thing that OpenClaw does. Now it writes all of its data to a FileMaker database so that I can see it, track it, understand it. And that every single word of every single conversation from now till I'm done will be in a FileMaker database that I can then refer to at any time in the future. This was not possible before. And I did this in an hour.
So I think that really speaks to the question about this July 2025 article, where Meter was the company that did the research, where they were saying that we were, developers were actually slower. This is 9 months ago, right?
Yeah,
I agree. That is totally wrong. And in fact, Joseph Petty mentioned that they've actually since put out a new article saying that there are some updates. Do you have any specific words about that, Joseph? What did they say in this new article? I heard about it, but I haven't read it.
Yeah, they said that their methodology was flawed, that the way that they kind of segmented people before they even got to asking the questions gave a bias towards devs that were interested in using AI as opposed to all devs. So I guess the way that they just recruited people for the study skewed it from the start. So there's a large subset of the exact same group that put out the study said that they didn't get kind of the same response that they did because of the requirements, because of the way they worded it. Have you used AI and found it useful and been able to, I guess they kind of filtered out a lot of people that should have taken the study that because they didn't answer some question right. So they didn't go ahead and retract everything from before, and they didn't put out a new study, but they said enough that they're not really standing behind what they put out last time either.
That was also July, right? So
yeah.
A shift in the entire world has happened with Claude 4.6.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it is the top. We are now going down the slope rather than up the slope. This was a huge change. If you guys haven't paid attention, it's all of a sudden, well, for example, like my wife, I don't think that would have worked in a previous version. It would have been a pain. It would have been difficulty, but she was able to just, I like to use the phrase, prompt it into existence.
Yeah.
Something that she's been thinking about for a while.
Now, I think that it would have been able to work in July of 2025 for developers like us,
Right.
because I know, in my experience in July of 2025, the stuff that you could do was still amazing. But 9 months in AI world is like 9 years. And
Yeah.
what Claude's doing in 4.6, both with Opus and Sonnet, is amazing. And I haven't tried it yet, but I understand that the new Gemini 3.1 is even better. So
Hmm.
I'm pretty
I haven't tried
excited
it.
about that.
Yikes.
And Heidi was also mentioning that, and I've read it too. I've never subscribed to OpenAI, but the ChatGPT 5.3 Codex, which is OpenAI's version of like Claude Code, it's a terminal coding tool. It's supposed to be as good, if not better, than Claude. So the tools now have just gotten so good within the last 9 months. It's amazing. But yeah, I think in July of 2025, if you weren't a professional developer, you would have probably created a lot of slop and been really frustrated. But as a professional developer, when you're seeing the code being created in real time right in front of your eyes, you can see what's happening, and if it's going in the wrong direction, or if it's doing something weird.
If you
Um,
understand it.
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Even in July of 2025, as a professional coder, it was incredibly useful. I mean, I took on a project that would have taken at least 9 months with a team of a lot of people, and I did it in 2 weeks, and it blew my mind. I was, I was so grateful because, um, it would have been one of those things where, as an in-house developer, I would have been spending a lot of late nights and weekends doing work on my own time just to keep up with the task. But instead, I was able to give time, back to my family, and do other things. So I really think that now, with like you're saying, Matt, with Opus, with Claude 4.6, it's
Yep.
just a new page has been turned.
Yeah,
That
Josh was saying you
said,
don't like it. Yeah.
what's that?
Well, Josh was saying that he thought 4.5 was better than 4.6. Um, so yeah, I think we should. I don't know. This is an interesting discussion. Let's take one small step back. Um, I would define, and I would like to get feedback on this, vibe coding as basically writing code in a platform that you don't know. So as FileMaker developers, that would mean me writing JavaScript code that I can't debug without AI and
I,
don't
I,
understand.
I think that's a good point that you make, but I would take a small bit of contention in that if you know the language, it's so fun. That's where the vibe coding to me comes in, because you're like surfing with, the code. You're watching it happen in real time. So I code in Angular on the
Mm,
front end,
mm,
and it
mm.
uses TypeScript as the language, and you can really see what's happening and quickly understand if it's going in the right direction or the wrong direction. And it's really fun. It feels like you're surfing with the code. I
Yeah.
don't know a better way to put it. So if you don't know it, yes, you can vibe code just by talking to it and coding it and speaking it into existence, like you said. But if you do
Yeah.
know the code, it's a different kind of vibe coding, and it is a vibe. It's almost like playing music. You might know, like, if you're a musician, and I know there's a lot of musicians on today. If you've ever done any kind of improvisation, that's what it feels like. You
Mm,
may you may
mm.
you may speak jazz, or you may
Yes.
speak blues, and when you're riding that wave and improvising, that's to me what vibe coding feels like.
Um, but I think also we're kind of different. Hey, can you turn in video, by the way? I don't know if you can or cannot
I
do it.
I can. The problem with my video is that for some reason it's making my screen go blank, and
Oh,
my mouse gets stuck. So if it does that,
oh,
I'll turn it back off. But
all right.
and
Yeah,
now I
also
just
you're
happened to get,
totally posterized.
yeah, the sun just came in my face right now, but
You
it's
guys have
cool.
sun there? It's almost 9 o'clock at night here. Whatever. Um,
So let me jump into the next topic here. And it kind of speaks to what we were talking about. So topic 2 is slop debt versus FileMaker relational graph. So vibe coding often leads to Frankenstein code bases where refactoring drops by 60% and code duplication spikes by 400%. I will have to admit that even with the latest models, this is true. You get If you change your code, if you try to do some deep refactoring, there is a lot of slop that gets left behind. Have you had that experience, Matt?
no, I'm not sure I fully followed. Restate that.
So yeah, so for example, let's say um, you know, I was building some kind of like connection to my FileMaker data API,
Hmm.
and I wanted to change it all of a sudden to O data, right? Now it'll do that, no problem, but it'll leave a lot of that FileMaker data API code in there, and it's just kind of like technical debt that builds up over time. It's just kind of slop,
Yeah.
right? And so that is a kind of a problem. Now, your app still works in the long run, but there is
Well,
kind of this issue where I'm being
We're
left with technical debt.
we're arguing the
no,
opposite
that's
sides
not
in this thing,
that's not
right?
the case if you need the thing is your sort of role as architecture manager, you can manage that. You can have that clean. You don't just see the thing is the term vibe coding has sort of a bad connotation because it implies people who know very little sitting down and telling an AI what to do. But for someone who does understand what they're doing, you can manage that. That you know that if you're changing from one method of access to another,
It's kind of a different term, though, isn't
that
it?
it does need to be um, it does need to be cleaned up. And I found it actually really, really good for building and testing, for doing a lot of cleaning up. And to be honest, I'd probably spend half my time asking it what we've built. So I've essentially spent the last 3 months doing nothing but sitting in Claude code all day, in a variety of different languages. And I probably spend half the time asking it, what are the problems with what we built? What are the weaknesses? How can we improve this? Um, and and I found it's really, really good at highlighting the issues. But you do need to proactively
Yeah,
manage. You need to manage this.
yeah.
Don't just say, if you say build this, build that, then yeah,
Right.
you're gonna
But
end
see,
up with
the
a
thing
mess.
is, with Opus 4.6 and these other tools, it's actually to the point now where it can manage that process. It can actually
Yeah.
take care of the slop and manage the slop, and really this becomes less of a problem rather than more of a problem. Not in FileMaker, right? Because we
Right.
don't have that, right? So we're really on the outside of a lot of this. Aggie has that tool that she just released that's really cool. Matt Petrowski has something he's working on that's does a lot of AI FileMaker integration where you can do a lot of the coding. You could use AI to actually develop FileMaker databases. That's not the main thing I focus on. I guess I'm kind of waiting for Claris to do it, but it's never going to be as good as all these other languages are. I just can't imagine.
I think it can be, and I think if I recall correctly, Rick maybe alluded to a possibility that might be coming in the near future. But to your point, Ian, Kate Waldhauser also has a comment here in the chat where she says you can have another agent do that role as well. So basically, if you put this up in GitHub or whatever, or if you set up agents in Cursor or however you want to set it up, you can have
Mhm.
agents go back and clean up your
Yeah,
technical
yeah.
debt. So where this slop debt used to be a big issue, especially maybe, back around July of 2025, um, more and more all of these issues that were giving vibe coding a bad name are being taken care of. And I think it's something that I was concerned about in the FileMaker community, that there was a lot of um, naysaying or poo-pooing about vibe coding and how, terrible it is and how we shouldn't use it. But a lot of these issues that it had either could be mitigated just because we're professional developers and we understand that, we need to clean things up, and or now there are tools that are being created to address these specific issues.
Mhm.
And I think some of us, like Joseph Petty, Heidi, Ian, some of us who do a lot of coding in a text-based IDE, every one of you that I've talked to has really just seen incredible productivity using vibe coding, to a greater or lesser degree. Maybe we use it a lot, maybe you use it just a little bit, but the productivity is there, and I think that it's something that I personally feel like this sense of responsibility to evangelize to the FileMaker community. We have the developer skill set to be great vibe coders. And so, if anybody's scared of it because they've heard bad things about vibe coding, if you get a chance, give it a shot.
Actually,
Yeah.
the best example recently is probably the Anthropic hackathon they had recently. The three winners, they weren't developers. The guy who
Really?
won it, the guy who won it was a lawyer.
I didn't hear about that.
Basically, what he built was
Well,
a
he
system.
did. He won because he was desperate because he's out of a job.
No, but
Like
what he
all
built.
lawyers. I'm just
No, the
kidding.
thing is, what he knew was he knew about the problem. He knew the domain and he understood the
Mhm, mhm.
problem. So he was
Yes.
able to, and the problem that he
Yeah.
solved, that he's built a tool to work on is it was around California and the housing crisis and not enough houses being built. But apparently, according to him, a large part of the problem is that a lot of the building is stuck in planning permission. So what he did was he built a tool that took rejection letters from the government and basically went and looked through, looked up, you know, looked up the precise building code stuff and gave people a step-by-step method to here's how you get past this,
Wow.
here's how you fix the planning problems.
Yeah.
And the weird thing is that apparently somebody from local government picked it up and saw it and said, no, we need this because, because we want people to build houses. They don't like the fact that housing is stuck in planning. So it's
Yeah.
a
So
really cool.
I don't know. There's a couple things that I'd say. So like when Sullivan, you and I first set this up, um, I don't know. I kind of want to put an exclamation point on what you just said, Ian. But also, I want to take another, taking steps back. The FileMaker script workspace is great. I don't really need anything more than that for most of the stuff I do in FileMaker, and for a lot of the AI stuff that I do. I still really want to do it in the script workspace, and it's fast enough for me to do it, and I can. I don't know. I guess I can use it to do exactly what I want to do. That it doesn't really, for me, I don't really feel like any need to do it any other way. It's good enough for what I need. And it's going to continue to be good enough for all the problems that it has been solving for the last 20 years and all the problem, you know. So I actually would say the script workspace is a very, very amazing thing in FileMaker, just as it is without any help from any other source.
I agree, and the guardrails that it provides are super helpful. But if people are not aware of what TypeScript does, TypeScript gives you guardrails in text. So it's not quite as strict as as script workspace.
Yeah.
But TypeScript is like a superset of JavaScript where the typing part of it basically are the guardrails. So if there's any kind of problem in your coding, TypeScript will immediately tell you there's a problem, and the AI recognizes it, it sees it, and you can see it. It'll when you're in something like Cursor, your IDE, and it has some kind of you know something that goes outside of the guardrails. TypeScript will immediately say, hey, there's some kind of problem. The AI model will say, okay, we have a problem here. Let me go back and fix it, and it does it all in real time. So the guardrails, which used to be a huge advantage for FileMaker, are now being also answered in TypeScript, and I think that's why TypeScript is becoming such really the main language in the web world as opposed to just plain JavaScript. Let's go on to question number 3. So security is a big question, obviously, right? The out-of-process risk and the local LLM solution. So there's an argument to be made about whether or not using vibe coding is safe or not if you're building things that are not local. So most vibe coding tools, Cursor, Replit, Vercel, are cloud native, requiring code-based context to be sent to the external servers. Whereas FileMaker developers in regulated sectors often maintain a deep skepticism of off-prem solutions. Does FileMaker 2025's on-prem AI rulebook protect us? And the big question is, are we as FileMaker developers being too paranoid, or is the rest of the industry being too reckless sharing their code with these online tools like Cursor and Replit? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think from the peanut gallery is what I want to hear from.
I don't see it
It's
as a
something.
guardrail as much as a limitation, really. I mean, at this point, there's a lot more that you could do in FileMaker if it wasn't for the XML structure and the script language being so locked down. If there was a CLI that let you programmatically build apps and write scripts, I could do tons of stuff with Claude Code. But it's really restricted, and you can try to export the DSL or the XML and edit it and then hope it re-imports properly, but that's clunky. And like I think what started as a guardrail to help low code devs make better decisions or whatever, now it's those guardrails are limitations that prevent you extending the platform as easy.
So what about this question though about, if you're creating your custom IP for, some tool that you have and you're building it using Claude Code and it's going up to Claude's servers and now, Anthropic knows exactly how you built your custom application. Are we being paranoid about sharing that with Claude, or is it just like, the advantage of using Claude and getting it first to market is more valuable than worrying about sharing your code?
I think it's a little paranoid. If you use a business account, they have, there's something there in the agreement saying that your data isn't being used for training. Now, if you just pick like random free AI tools and use the free account and don't have that agreement, maybe there's a little bit of risk there, but the chance that it goes from your chat session to the model's training data to actually into the next model, right? Because at first it's only in that chat, right? It's not going to leak into the next person's conversation. But if it can somehow go from your chat into the training data, and then later somebody asks a question that's specific enough that they're going to steal that exact IP, that one part of your code that made it unique, I think that's a little paranoid. And then if you do it with a business account, there's even less risk. So if the concern is IP, I'd say that's paranoid. If it's like liability and customer, private data, there's definitely reason to be concerned there.
Sure.
Again,
For
if you
data,
have
for
the
sure.
business account, you're protected. But yeah, I think it's not as big of a risk as some people make it out to be.
I would agree, especially because with vibe coding, you're basically accessing, the knowledge of all of the, Stack Overflows that have ever existed, right? So what's going to be original? It's like in music, um, there's really nothing new under the sun, right? Everything's already been written one way or another.
I mean,
Your
yes and no.
creativity, what's that?
I mean, I can come up with an 8-note melody that's never existed in 30 seconds. I mean, so you could say that there's nothing new, but the number of things you can construct with 12 tones is infinite, nearly.
Yeah, that's true. And so everybody's app is going to end up being unique in the same way that your song or your melody is going to end up being unique.
Mm-hmm.
But the way that you got to it is still available, as common knowledge, right? So how important is it to protect your IP? I don't know. It's an interesting question.
I think that part of it that I'm quite interested in this question is the on-prem thing, and I'm not really a big fan of on-prem FileMaker server. I know that there's a lot of industries it's a big thing, and I know that like the privacy part of it is huge. All the largest customers I have definitely run their own servers and don't have anything on the cloud. But also, I think Joseph, you were saying that the service level agreements that you get with these provider companies are really specific and clear, that they don't use your data for training. The OpenAI policy that I've read really carefully recently says that if you make an API call, they store your request for 30 days for only the purpose of abuse. Like if you're using it to try to make a bomb or something like that, they'll store it so that if law enforcement has a warrant, they can get the information. That's the only thing that they store it for. All other purposes, and by the way, there's even a way to opt out of that. So I think you can somehow prove that you are trustworthy or whatever and opt out. And they obviously would never use it for training. So if you can trust that, and if you're not going to be using it for abuse, then I don't know. I guess that's kind of if that's where you are, and that's for sure where I am in terms of the trust factor. But then I also have a horror story about a recent financial hack that was almost successful on me. Maybe we can talk about that after at the end.
Sure.
My financial advisor was hacked, not me, but it was a really clever, or almost successful thing. And I had a second part to my point that I forgot. So
I'm going to jump to this next question, and this is kind of
we have
interesting.
37, right? Topics.
Yeah, no, not quite. So this next question is kind of interesting because you showed us the example of your wife, building this really cool tool. I can imagine at some point, it becomes something that she wants to kind of grow and add features to it, maybe even monetize it somehow. People are going to do these kinds of things, right?
Yeah.
So the question here is, the creator maintenance divide. Will we all be janitors in 2027? In other words, vibe coding creates two tracks: those who understand foundations, like us, and those who depend entirely on AI. When they do vibe coding, they're just talking to the model. So if anyone can vibe code on an app, what is our value as professional consultants? How do we prevent ourselves from becoming AI janitors in the future, or professionals hired only to fix the broken slop generated by citizen developers in the future? Or is that our personal advantage for our future in development? What do you guys think about that question? Kate says, the toughest question yet.
I'll start. I think that we're entering an area where like the roles of a product manager, a developer, a designer, like the whole team, are converging. Anybody on the team can take that thing to the finish line now. A designer that used to just have the concept and try to make it look good and then hand it off to the next person, right? Like they can build the whole app. The product managers aren't tied up waiting on a dev team now. They can do everything, right? So one way to look at it is that it's giving you a lot more abilities. At the same time, the people that are very comfortable only doing their one role, like, developer or whatever, it can be scary and feel like you're about to be eliminated. And if you're stuck in only doing that one thing, that might be true then. Like you have to adapt. You have to use this as an advantage and take on those new roles and basically get good at the part you don't know. So a lot of the people that are vibe coding and have no developer skills, like maybe they got a great eye for the design side, or they're a good PM and they've got just the problem and solution kind of mindset and understand the business problem. And I think that's where we can add the most value is our domain experience. The understanding like the business problem and let the AI solve the coding part of it.
Yeah. John Mathewson makes a comment. Isn't it about scale? Many apps we build are large, complex implementations that require careful design. Will AI replace that basic learning model? I think that what this question is proposing
Yes.
is that as citizen developers, grow their apps, are they going to be able to manage it as it grows? And maybe that's going to be what we do in the future as professional developers who have experience, you know, understanding the context of how development works, and maybe we can see what where the issues are in their code base. Then,
One of the biggest jobs that's under threat is CEOs. So
Yeah.
it's not janitors, it's not coders. AI can do a much better job than any CEO can, balancing the resources and doing the things that they're trying to do. Well, it will be able to do if it doesn't do that right now. So it's not the people that you suspect. Who else has a cat that as soon as you start having a meeting becomes crazy?
Rick makes a good point here. He says, how many developers have made a good living off of fixing other people's
Yeah.
slop? Yeah, that's a really good point. And I think that there's going to be a lot more of that as more and more people do vibe coding.
Yeah.
And the more experience we have with vibe coding, the more we're going to see the nuances of
I,
where that slop shows up.
I'll throw it back at you, Rick. How many people here feel good about making a living fixing other people's slop? Because I don't. I'd much rather do the creative stuff. The thing that really drives me in this discussion, um, it connects to that Ian talking about the lawyer. We, as FileMaker developers, have spent many years becoming experts at understanding the needs of our customers, whether we're an internal developer or whether we're a consulting. We understand the business and the needs and the workflow and the users, what they want, what they need, what they don't know that they need. We understand that in a way that most developers don't. No kids do coming out of school. And so that empowers us to be able to use the tools that we now have in a way that really couldn't be done before. And I guess we sort of have to decide, are we going to use that skill to go away from FileMaker and do it in other things? Are we going to use that skill to try to do, to actually just do traditional FileMaker better? In my case, I'm going to use the skill to actually build AI extensions to FileMaker and have things that go out so FileMaker is still the center of everything.
I have a major opinion on that.
Let's hear it.
And that's that FileMaker is the best tool in the background for AI and vibe coding. And the reason is because, one of the problems with front-end web developers is that you can do your front end and that's all good, but how do you connect it to a database? How do you deploy it? How do you put an API on top of your database? There's all these different things. How do you have a scripting language on the back end, right? There's all these things that are huge challenges to, quote unquote, normal web developers. And FileMaker gives you all of that in one package. So I've said it before,
agree.
and I'll say it again. I think that FileMaker developers are uniquely positioned to have a superpower in the development world. If you do your front end using AI with something like TypeScript or JavaScript, whatever, and you use FileMaker on the back end, you can be way ahead of the game. Whereas a lot of these other web developers are struggling with how do I deploy? How do I have security built in? How do I put some kind of scripting on the back end, and then they have to learn another language. They have to learn Node, or they have to learn PHP, or that something like that. Because we have all of that skill set already in FileMaker, and you have a hugely powerful calculation tool within the fields themselves. You have the script engine. You have not only the data API, but also OData. We have everything that we need to be full stack developers except the front end. And that's where people are really, nervous about jumping into web coding. But with vibe coding, that takes away the learning curve and that huge obstacle of being able to do the front end. So this is something that I think I've said before at other meetings, and I just will continue to say over and over again. As a FileMaker developer, we have a secret weapon in the FileMaker platform. Because we have all of these things built in that other developers don't have.
All of that kind of makes me wonder, what is the net of that? Is vibe coding good or bad, right? Is FileMaker scripting good or bad? It's like, I don't know. I don't think there really is an answer.
Hammers good or bad?
Go ahead, Ian.
I was just saying, are hammers good or bad? They're tools.
Oh, I like that. Yeah. So I'm not really just evaluating the tool itself, because I completely agree with you. AI is a tool like a hammer is a tool. It's a perfect analogy in my opinion, and I'm glad you brought it up. It can be used for good or bad. It doesn't have any inherent goodness or badness philosophically.
So that kind of leads me to the next question, FileMaker's future. Some argue that FileMaker's run is nearing its end because the future belongs to pure vibe coding, text-based, coding in general. Can FileMaker survive the shift if it maintains a closed environment that doesn't allow for pure text editing? What do you guys think?
No.
I'm going to start on that one.
Nope.
So
If they
the
don't- if
core
they
of
don't do
FileMaker, that's the
something,
huge
they're-
valuable part, is actually not necessarily in the coding part of it. It's the things that you were just talking about, Sol, like the ability to, for me, storing data in a FileMaker database feels physical, and I need that, right? I have a thing, I have a file. It can be local, it can be not local. I can do all these things I can do with it that I know that it can do that I can't do with any other database method, are just a huge benefit. And all of the things that it doesn't do, we've been doing with APIs for years and years and years. So, and we can now build the front end that way too. You know, you've got the data API, OData, and MCP, right? I got all three of those things working today with my OpenClaw while taking a bath. Actually, one of them I did before, but anyway. Look, so that's kind of my 2 cents. Ian, I want to hear what you have to say.
I
That's
have
true,
a
but that's
comment.
only part of the.
Go ahead, Lynn.
We spent all this time talking about coding, but to me, half or maybe even more of FileMaker is design surface and user experience. And where does AI come into that whole realm? Because to me, in addition to analyzing users' business processes and doing the architecture of the whole thing is the value that we bring, but also there's the design and the user experience, which I'm not seeing AI taking over. I mean, we can standardize everything so it all looks the same,
I
but
don't know. I'm going to disagree with you greatly on that one, Lynn.
Me too.
I think the current state of vibe coding with FileMaker or vibe coding with AI vastly goes beyond what's possible to do with a FileMaker layout. So the benefit of FileMaker is not in that area anymore. I don't think it has been for a long time. I still love building FileMaker database layouts. I still definitely have a lot of value with it, but I think if you really want to do something involved and complex and beautiful and consistent and modern and scalable and all that, it's all possible with AI tools now.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about, Lynn, when I say the front end. So the front end is what you're talking about, the graphical user interface, and the web, is the ubiquitous choice now for user interfaces. Even these huge SaaS products, everything is now going with a web front end, right? Because you can access it anywhere. And it's scalable, like Matt said, and it fits on any kind of screen. It will conform to the screen size, whether it's your phone or whether it's a giant widescreen, and you can make it beautiful. And there's been a lot of great interfaces that have been created so that the AIs now have enough examples to create beautiful interfaces, and there's some really great examples. Ian, I think we cut you off a little bit earlier. What was your comment that you were going to make?
Actually, to be honest, this actually feeds really well into it, because one of the major things that FileMaker is lacking when it comes to working with AI tools is it's very difficult to build a process that writes the code and then runs tests on the code and verifies it's working correctly. But that also applies to the user interface.
Unit testing.
If I write a web front end in Claude, I can tell Claude has a skill that will basically launch the website, look at it, and say, does this meet the requirements? There's no way to do that in FileMaker. Potentially you could do that with.
OpenClaw can actually take over and run a database. OpenClaw can actually do a lot of that. You can point it at a WebDirect solution and it can do unit testing on it because it can actually click around the screen and control it.
That's the closest that you can get.
You can also Apple script to control, and you can have it actually take over and do screenshots on like a regular FileMaker Pro instance. It's not the same. It's not necessarily
it's not the same.
Code,
Ian's point about unit testing is still, it's still valid, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Because it's not. Because FileMaker's not code at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Right.
The other sort of areas are that we've got a couple of things. In terms of schema, we can update the schema in OData, but I don't think we can create relationships on the relationship graph, unless if I'm mistaken in that, please correct me, because I'd love to be wrong on that.
You cannot currently copy and paste relationship graph objects for the most part.
Is Christian still on?
But with OData and with SQL, you could get around that, right? You may not even need to create those relationships in the relationship graph.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's the best practice, but you could.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you use SQL instead of the FileMaker backend and you're vibe coding the front end, you're just using FileMaker for the scripts then at that point and log entries.
Yeah.
And well, the scripts and the security and the deployment, right?
But
So
the problem
actually,
is
it's
the
interesting.
scripts, you have to paste, you have to copy and paste to update. Unless FileMaker finally finishes the perpetually 90% complete migration tool. Which
So Heidi has.
We have like 5 meetings going on with the amazing stuff happening in chat.
Yeah, Heidi had I think a worthwhile comment here, an alternative opinion to my point, where she says a lot of tech stack backends are easy to vibe code securely, and I think that's true, and I think that's because the web development community needed some kind of answer to this problem, but at the same time we already know FileMaker, right? So we can just immediately take advantage of it. And I played around with stuff like Supabase, and it's pretty cool, but I don't know. Coming from a FileMaker, perspective, I still would lean FileMaker, and I'm really glad that I can use FileMaker with an AI vibe code front end.
Are there more topics? Can we otherwise
absolutely.
stop sheet here?
Yep. Oops.
We've got
here.
Oh yeah, 7, 8, 9. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if we're going to get to all of them.
So starting on topic 6, those first 5 topics were kind of challenges to vibe coding. This starting from topics 6, 7, 8, 9, these are kind of pros for vibe coding. So this one is really great, and I've talked earlier about vibe coding feels very much like improvising in music. So this one says the flow state argument is syntax a barrier to innovation. The pro vibe stance: traditional coding requires context switching between the what and the how. So the what is, what are you building, and the how is the syntax, right? Vibe coding allows developers to stay at the architectural level because you don't have to worry about the syntax and every little last piece of, learning the specific syntax in something weird like PHP. And I say here, by ignoring the syntax of, this is an example, of a while function or complex JSON arrays, we can solve 3 business problems in the same time you solve 1. Does this allow us to stay in the creative zone? And Matt, I think you had some comments on that earlier.
Well, this is one of the ones that against kind of if I'm on if I'm on the con side for vibe coding, I lose that one on this one, because I really very strongly think that this allows us to stay in the creative mode. And I would go further. I don't think vibe coding feels like just playing jazz. I think it actually feels like being able to pick up the violin and being able to play every single scale perfectly and every arpeggio perfectly. And having you get a chance to skip all of these other technique things that you otherwise would have had to learn before December of last year.
Excellent point.
But it's not a real skill, right? You still don't understand. You're not going to be Itzhak Perlman, famous violin player, just because you have the perfect technique. You still have to know what you want. This example is really good, right? With the while function, complex arrays, and stuff like that. I don't fight those anymore. I just ask for them to be written by AI. If you copy and paste a calculation function and it works, and you can look at it and see that it looks right, and the input and the output give you what you want, I move on with my day and move on to the next fun creative thing. That's where I sit.
Yeah.
Anybody against me on this one? Against us?
No, but I have an interesting anecdote. I was I use YouTube Music as my music platform, to listen to music, and it gives you recommendations, right? So it gave me some recommendations on these funk versions of famous classic metal songs, right? And so I was listening to some of these, and
Say
I was
more.
just blown away by how good they were. But of course, I was having a conversation with my buddy saying that these songs already were good when they were written, right? The guys that wrote these songs have a certain skill set. They wrote beautiful, amazing songs, and you can turn it into any genre, and it's a good song at its core, right? So my thinking at that point was that, oh well, AI can change the genre, but it still doesn't have the skill set to create brand new music, right? Or something that's at that quality. And then about a month later, I got recommended, this reggae song, and the band name was Soul Pulse, which I thought was kind of interesting because my name's Soul. And so I thought, I'll check it out, see what this is all about. And I was blown away by how good this song was. Oh man, I really wanted to hear the next one. So I listened to another one, and then another one. 5 songs deep, I thought, oh my gosh, I've discovered the coolest new reggae band of all time. I've got to figure out when they're coming to LA because I really want to go see them live. And I started searching around for who this band was and when they were going to be coming to LA, hoping that they would be coming. And I couldn't find them anywhere until I finally found a post on Reddit with the same issue. And they had discovered that this was actually an AI band. And they had written all of these amazing original songs. And so my original thesis that AI could change the genre but couldn't actually write new music, at least good new music, was totally wrong. And
Yep.
I didn't want to believe it, and
No.
I'm still having trouble swallowing that pill.
I'm with you.
Spotify is behind driving that change because they don't have to pay artists. You still pay them a subscription fee, but then the content you're consuming is way cheaper for them to create.
Yeah. So, quick input here. Heidi's asking Joseph Petty, I would like your response on secure backend stacks that you use. What are you using,
Yeah.
Joseph?
Well, you mentioned Supabase. That's a common one I use. A lot of the stuff that I build is connecting data between existing systems, like from Salesforce or HubSpot or Shopify, whatever it is. So a lot of times there is no backend that's central to it. It's more like the purpose of the thing I'm building is to bridge a couple existing systems. But if I'm building something from scratch, yeah, probably Supabase or AppWrite is another good one that I like. Neon they're a lot closer to Supabase, and AppWrite has several other things. They're a little more closer to say Cloudflare. But yeah, there's tons of good options out there. Right now, I think I've started to default towards anything with a CLI tool. If they have a good CLI to where Claude Code can do everything in the terminal, and I don't even got to go to the website, then that's my choice.
Very cool. And so, do you find with those other apps like Neon, Supabase, AppWrite, do you find that it's not just storing the data and having an API, but also deployment, security, scripting on the back end, all these things, are those like easy to access as well, or what do you do in terms of those things?
Yeah, Supabase has all that. They have edge functions so that you can, set up jobs to run when a condition is met, when a record's edited or whatever. So it can be your scripting as well, not just the storage.
The other things that FileMaker includes that I forgot to mention were backups and schedules, right? So that's another thing. Cron jobs end up being super helpful, and a lot of developers, struggled with setting up cron jobs on some of their databases. Cool. Let's go on to topic number 7, the polyglot superpower, breaking the FileMaker silo. So vibe coding allows FileMaker devs to leave the walled garden instantly. If you could vibe a perfect JavaScript Gantt chart into FileMaker WebViewer in 5 minutes without knowing JavaScript, why wouldn't you? Does vibe coding turn us from FileMaker developers into universal solution architects who can use any tool for the job? I mean, I think we've kind of been headed in this direction anyways before vibe coding was even a thing, right?
I wonder if we even covered this.
What do you mean, Matt?
I mean, it seems like we've got sort of this topic has been different parts of it have been
Right.
all in the previous conversation, kind of.
Right. So yeah, I think that I think the point that
I like
one
that.
of the, again, the reason why I thought this was going to be an important topic was because um, I want to communicate to the FileMaker community that vibe coding is available to you. We should not be afraid of it. It looks like Corey has a question. Corey, go ahead.
And I have a question too after that.
I was just going to say we had this exact thing come up. FileMaker's reporting options are challenging. And, you know, I was talking to a coworker and I just said, well, if you really wanted to go nuts, you could probably ask ChatGPT to come up with a, you know, something you could put in a web viewer. But that sounds like it would be a lot of work. She did it in almost no time at all. And this is somebody who just started using FileMaker a year ago. I mean, in this particular thing, it was absolutely perfect. And you know, showed that to the team and like, we should do all our reports this way. And we generate a lot of reports.
I teach FileMaker for a living, and I teach report generation, and I no longer teach for most reports the traditional FileMaker way. I teach the way of how to write good prompts and how to use the right guardrails to get AI generated reports that are in a web viewer, because they're ridiculously good.
Yeah.
And if you do it in the right way, you're going to get results that are correct. But it's generative AI, so you're going to get really weird rounding errors and really strange math problems and not 100% reliability. So there's only certain cases where they can be used.
Actually, got
she used it.
Uh,
She used it to grade the code and then took the data in from
Yeah.
from
Yeah. That's a completely reliable way to do it, is that way. I would want to ask everyone here, if you could vibe code a perfect JavaScript Gantt chart, because there's kind of no built-in tool for that, would you? I guess I would say, who would say no to that? I would really be curious about why wouldn't you do that?
Yeah.
I kind of would say no in the respect that I wouldn't want the AI to try to build it from scratch. There's plenty of good libraries out there for
Mm,
Gantt charts, and you can run
true.
that JS library inside a web viewer, and then the AI has to write like very little code. You know, you give it the raw data, you use the library, and there's like 2 or 3 lines that says create a new instance in this DOM element, and then it's just boom,
Yeah.
you've got a Gantt chart. So
So maybe the vibe
I
coding is
would
like,
use
how do
the
I
AI
connect my
to
FileMaker data to this library or something, huh?
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
that's the only kind of tricky part. But I mean, once you've done it a few times, passing data into a web viewer,
Hmm.
at that point, it's just like choosing which library, and there's plenty of them. So it's more about which one looks the way that you want, or you know, has the right like tooltips and whatever.
Yeah, so Ian says this sort of thing extends the runway for FileMaker. So he's talking about like, vibe coding and adding something like a Gantt chart to your FileMaker web view or something like that. Let's see what's topic 7. Okay, that's where we're at. Ian says topic 7. Yeah, he's answering Heidi there. Let's go to the next one, see if we can squeeze these all in here. Democratizing the aha moment, the end of the blank screen. So this is one of the super helpful things with I think AI in general. This is not just in vibe coding, but vibe coding excels at the 70% solution. It generates functional prototypes in seconds. It's really what we're talking about here is brainstorming, right? So is a slop prototype shown to a client today more valuable than a perfect architecture delivered in 2 weeks? Does this change the conversation from what is possible to how do we tweak this? And like I mentioned, I like to think of this aha moment as, when you're getting started and you have this kind of a blank slate, sometimes that's the most cumbersome part of building something, whether you're writing an essay or whether you're building a new application. That initial brainstorm planning, I think, is something that AI really excels at. What do you guys think about this? Do you use
I
do you
think even the
use
slop
AI?
one,
Go ahead, Joseph.
I think even that slop thing thrown together quickly it has some value considering the like minimal amount of time and effort required just to get some feedback from the client, right? So if you had like a 10-minute call with them to get some info about what they need, and you can go dump that in Lovable and vibe code something in like 5 minutes, that it gives them something tangible so that you can iteratively work on it and get some feedback.
Actually,
I know there's a guy in Europe I know that freelances, and he's started having his customers start it in Lovable and just like do a couple prompts and get the very basics of what they want, and then he'll export the code and take it over and build it properly. But it saves a ton of back and forth. So simply because of like the like minimal amount of time required, I think it has value. If you spent hours and hours to get that slop, then maybe it doesn't. But it's a quick iterative way to get feedback.
That's really interesting too, because if the client is the one who's giving you their ideas, they're probably much more likely to accept what you end up coming up with, as opposed to, oh, I wasn't quite thinking that, because they're the ones who initially had a hand in putting something forward. So you could save a lot of time right there as well, and make sure that you're doing something that is aligned with what they're daydreaming about.
Yeah, this is our
Yeah.
expertise, right? We
Yeah.
know what the clients want because we've been practicing those major and minor scales and arpeggios for our whole career. And AI does not do that. One thing that AI does not do at all right now is know what you want. You have to
So
tell it.
Sean asked the question, is there a risk that the client thinks the slop is good enough when you know there are still problems? I would say that there probably is that risk, but hopefully the client recognizes that it's still not complete, right? So it still provides a professional room to build on top of what their original idea was. But there is certainly that risk, and there's some people who are going to, think that their thing is good enough, and they're not going to want to pay a professional developer. Um, but typically in those cases, 6 months, a year down the road, they're going to get stuck and they're going to call you anyways, I think.
Yeah, maybe faster than that, but yeah.
Right. All right, let's see. The last topic here, the junior partner versus autopilot. So this is, I think, important to consider, and I think um, something that as developers we would probably naturally recognize. But so vibe coding isn't about replacement. It's about having the world's fastest, most obedient junior developer at your side.
No, it's
If
about
we
having
provide,
1,000 of the fastest, most obedient junior developers at your side.
right? At this point, yeah. So if we provide 20 plus years of wisdom and the AI handles the grunt work of typing, does that change the ethical concern about slop? Isn't it simply our job to review the junior's work? So I think the point here is that whereas people were concerned about, vibe coding, creating a bunch of junk code, um, if we use it as a junior partner, a junior developer, as opposed to a senior developer, we're the senior developers. We're still responsible for the final output. We're still responsible for making sure that everything is safe and secure and all that good stuff. Um, there's no reason why we can't use it as a tool, like Corey said. Yeah, Rick says your job is to mentor the junior to turn them into a senior. Yeah. Any comments on this? In your experience, Joseph, is 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 this model actually true? Is it a junior partner that you go back and review and that you fix things, or is it just too much slop and not worth it?
It really depends on how you use the tool. So I think vibe coding got the bad, got a bad reputation from people that didn't put any effort into the first prompt. It's like, just build me this, make no mistakes and build a whole invoicing or CRM or whatever. And then you see it and then you're like, oh, add this, change that, and yeah, that's going to create slop. But if you take a more detailed approach to it, some call it spec-driven development, where you like create a detailed requirements document and you're spending like hours or days developing that first prompt before it starts. Then between doing that and breaking it into small tasks, you give it the full plan, but then you don't ask it to do the full plan. It's just having the context of where you're headed. And then you break it into smaller chunks and you test each piece and get it working and then go to the next feature. So it's totally possible. But it takes the discipline of the person doing it to have that approach. And then also, as you find areas that the AI is creating slop, it doesn't know the answer. Maybe you're working with a library that it's not familiar with. You have to save that info, put it either into a Claude Code skill or save it to the memory or add it to your system instruction or something, so that the next time around you don't get to the same problem, right? So I think as long as you create that project requirements doc, you break it into small chunks and check the work as you're going and correct it and save the things that it gets wrong so we can do it again next time. I think you put those together and you can avoid the slop. But if you take the vibe coding is fun and I'm just chatting and like not really thinking about anything, yeah, you're going to create slop and have a mess to deal with later. So it's not the tool, it's how you use it.
Excellent. I 100% agree, and I can totally tell that you you've done plenty of this vibe coding because I would 100% agree that it's all about planning and putting it into smaller chunks. So Sean Kruger has a really good question. Someone earlier said that said something about vibe coding being my
I
chat
just
just moved.
responded.
Someone earlier said something about vibe coding being working in a language you aren't familiar with. Can you effectively review the code in that case? So Matt says that was his comment, and he thinks it's a big one. For now, I think there's still a level that a human needs to be able to understand what's happening in the code, certainly for anything mission critical. But I will say that one of the great things about vibe coding is how quickly you learn the language, right? Because you see it happening in front of you. And if there's something you don't understand, you can literally highlight it and say, explain what's going on here. Why are you doing this? What's what's the pattern that you're using? I would typically do this in FileMaker. How is this translatable? All that stuff. So I think it's true that, in the very beginning, there still is a learning curve, Sean, when you're vibe coding and you can't effectively review the code at first because you don't know the language, but you really can highlight sections and say, what are you doing here? And explain it to me, like a FileMaker developer or something like that. So it doesn't take that much effort to review the code to make sure that that everything is as it should be. What do you guys think about that?
About the amount of effort to review it?
If you don't know the language, yeah.
Yeah. I think you'll always be at a disadvantage if you don't know the language. You'll be able to do way more than you could without AI. But if you're talking about building something that's going to go to production and be shown, to end users, customers, external or whatever, I think that's a higher bar, and it should be, you can call it vibe coding if you want. Maybe at that, to me, it's a spectrum, vibe coding to spec-driven development, and the more disciplined approach. But honestly, like I think that the bad rap of the term vibe coding needs to go away because it's getting better and better, and it's more the way people are using it as opposed to it inherently being bad. So I see it as a spectrum, but I keep calling it vibe coding because I want to change that and get rid of the bad name. But yeah, I think that it's all in how you use it, and yeah, it's not inherently good or bad. It's just getting people on board with the right methodology, understanding that they're maybe using it wrong.
Yeah, you make a good point. I think you will always be at a disadvantage if you don't know the language, but I found it in a great way to learn. And John mentions that he would assume that you could have it comment everything, and you really can. You can, every single section of code, you can have it comment and explain what it's doing,
Yeah.
the reasoning behind that and all that stuff. So
There's a
it,
big difference in being able to skim over the code and feel like you understand it and what it's doing, and then actually learning it, right? And if you don't know the
right.
language, I don't think you can learn it just by vibe coding. Like the learning happens in the friction, in the struggling to type and remember, oh, wait, I screwed that up. Wait, I had to go look it up. That friction, that's when you learn. And if you're
Sure.
just vibing and glossing over and reading it, to me, like I can pick up new JavaScript stuff easily when I'm vibe coding because I've been doing JavaScript for years. I'm really familiar with it, but I'll see something new and I can kind of glance at it and I'll be like, okay, now I'll know that one next time. But then I'll do something in Python, and I've only been working in Python for like a year, and there's a lot of it that's totally new to me. So I can scan it and I'll get the gist of it. I feel like I understand why it's written that way or whatever.
Right.
but I can't go do it now. I'm not going to be able to write it. And I think you'll always be at a disadvantage if you don't really know the language when it comes to getting your hands dirty and fixing it and understanding why the AI got it wrong. Eventually it'll hallucinate. You'll hit a problem it doesn't know. And now you've built this massive thing that you don't know how it works,
I think that's an excellent point. But I also, there's like you said, there's a spectrum. The fact that you can get the gist of something like Python is still super helpful, right? So can you end up doing something productive? Yes. Is it dangerous to maybe, decide you want to put that into production? Yeah, probably yes. Two things can be true at the same time. And but I think overall, the fact that you're jumping into Python is probably because there is some confidence level in the fact that you can get the gist of it while you're doing your vibe coding, I imagine.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think we're going to wrap some things up here. Is anybody else want to jump in? I know we've been kind of going fast paced here. Anybody want to unmute and share any comments or questions? Tony White, go ahead.
Thank you. I had a Zoom crash, so I lost my chat, but I took notes in email. I just want to make 3 quick points, just put them on the record, that I think when we look at Vibe coding, we're kind of comparing websites, which plays to code generation because you're generating text. FileMaker is a different platform. It's a binary file format. Some of it's text-based, calculations, custom functions. Some of it's hard to get to, the relationship graph. Some of it is the XML that you can, with the tools that are out there, you can crack the clipboard and do it. So you can do amazing code gen. I hear the word vibe coding. I think code gen. Like, how can I write quality code faster? That's point number 1. We got 3 of these. 2, FileMaker code different than web code because there's context. So if you're going to write FileMaker code, there's often context. So you need input. You need table names, table occurrences, layouts, fields, etc. That is a code generation challenge. It can be met. There's things that could be built into the platform, make it easier, but that's bread and butter. If you want speed in the platform, that's an important thing to tackle from the mothership, I'd say. And then conceptual model, what are the zones we work in? Some are easy for code gen, calculations, custom functions. Honestly, there's only a finite number of custom functions that we need. Once they're built, they should be reusable, tested, hopefully. And then I would just say FileMaker is a terrific platform. I think if we play to its strengths, it's gonna perform very well in the marketplace. If you know the platform and you pick the tools that are appropriate to the platform and how you code in it, you can do great things. And finally, a terrific conversation. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Thanks for putting on the show.
Awesome. Thank you, Tony. Very much appreciate it. Yeah, I think I saw somebody in the chat say they would love to see, somebody use Cloud Code in real time. And I think that's something that maybe we should do at one of the next upcoming meetings, is just show you what it's like and how you can tie it into FileMaker. So you can have the best of both worlds. Because I think you're right, Tony. FileMaker is, a platform that we've all come to love. That's why we're here. But there are some things that we can do currently outside of it that in conjunction, we, as I mentioned before, we have a superpower with FileMaker on the back end. Any other questions or comments?
This was so fun.
It was very fun. It went by very fast, and oh my goodness, you guys have been fantastic in the chat. I mean, I think this has been one of the most lively chats I've ever seen. It's been difficult even just to keep up with it, but
yeah, I can't wait to download the chat file and put it into ChatGPT when we're done.
Right?
And tell
or
me,
Claude.
summarize this and give me the links that are worth following, which is all of them.
I know that vibe coding AI. There's a real AI. What do you call it? Fatigue, right? But it's just coming out so quickly, and there's so much to talk about that it still continues to be valuable. So thank you guys for allowing me to bring it up again. And I think that's it. Happy March, everybody.
Cool. All right.
Thanks, Saul.
Thanks for joining us, Joseph and Matt, everybody that jumped in, Ian, Tony, thank you guys.
Yeah. Thanks for the
Thank you.
invite.
Absolutely.
All
Take
right.
care. Have a good one. Bye-bye.
See y'all.